Welcome back to another episode of the Resinator's Conquest podcast. This episode's all about the Wadroon. I wanted to apologize for the delay in this episode, but we had a winter storm come through my area and it knocked out my internet. And I just didn't have the bandwidth to upload anything or really do any kind of work on the internet. On to the count. For the characters of my army, I have a Scion of Conquest, a Predator, a Matriarch Queen, and an Apex Queen. For the regiments, I have 12 Blooded, 12 Braves, 24 Slingers, 6 Raptor Riders, and 3 Warbred. So I really consider this army to be a little bit in the fledgling stages, and I tend to play First Blood more than Last Argument of King with this army. Especially with the Slingers, but we'll get into that later. We'll also get into a little bit of what I'm missing for this army in kind of the future, because there's definitely some plans that I have for the army, especially since I've been playing it and someone in my local community also plays the Wadroon. So I get a lot of experience playing against them from playing against him, and so I know where my army wants to go. So this is still kind of like the beginning of an army for the Wadroon. On to the state of my army. For my army, I have most of it assembled. The Raptor Riders are in sub-assembly because I wanted to paint the Raptors first and then paint the Rider and then put them on and attach them. And especially because I think I made the first 3 in a little bit of an awkward pose. I didn't want to do that same thing with the second 3. So the second 3 are not even assembled yet. I wanted to get the paint all on the Raptors themselves first, and then move on to assembling the Riders the way I want, and then painting them. So the Riders on the Raptor Riders aren't going to be on the Riders for a while, I have a feeling. But all the rest of the army is pretty much together. Oh, the Apex Queen. The Apex Queen is also not all the way together, and that's because she has like these strap pieces and her spear that I think is pivotal to making sure to get the right angle when you mount her on the Apex Predator. So, and same with like the leashes. You want to make sure the harnesses or the lead guides, whatever you want to call them, that she has to control the Apex Predator. So I have that kind of set aside, and I'm probably going to start painting her without those pieces on, and then once I get the Apex Predator, put her on there and mount her correctly, and then glue all the pieces, and then hide the glue hopefully. So those are the 2 different things that I don't have together. Otherwise, everything is together. It's primed. Most of it has some sort of paint on it. I think I figured out the color scheme for the skin tone at least. It took me a while to figure out what color scheme I wanted to do for their skin tone, but I do definitely like that gray kind of skin tone, so I'm going to go with that. The Raptor Riders were a little bit of a problem for me because I started painting them this dark shadow flesh from AK, and was going to go work up to the light. It's just a regular shadow flesh, and that's what I painted my Blooded, and then I ended up painting my for my Nord's army, and then I also ended up painting my Hill Giant in that same skin color tone of the dark shadow flesh. And so I was like, I really don't want my Raptors, who are supposed to be kind of a different area, different species, I don't want them to look the same as the Giant and the Nord's army. So I quickly changed my mind and didn't know what skin color I wanted them. I still am not 100% sure I know what skin tone I want to do with them, but I'm thinking more like one of them, I don't know if you see in the pictures, one of them does have a greenish skin tone that I was trying, but I didn't like that. I was thinking of maybe going with a kind of a grayish skin tone, kind of like the Wadroon themselves, and this would also help with their feathers looking more, pronounced, that their body and skin were, a muted color, and then their feathers are all these different, beautiful colors, vibrant colors and stuff like that. So I think that would make a good contrast, but I need to paint one and see, how I want to do it. I really want to get back to these because I was really enjoying painting the feathers. I painted one fully, like the back end, and I used blue, but then I wanted to make a whole bunch of individual strikes of different other colors. So I used a different variety of, like reds, some purples, some other blues, and I think I used a green and even a yellow or an orange or something like that. But I was just trying to do a different variety of colors because I feel like in nature, sometimes you have these, these birds usually with these feathers that have all these colors, but if you look really closely at the feathers, you notice the feathers have other colors in there mixed in that are, you don't think, well, why is that color in there? But it's just like, it's a random little hair or a little fiber that's a different color. And so I really wanted the feathers to look like that. And I was having a lot of fun doing all those little, little strokes of different colors and making it just kind of fill out the whole feather look. So I really want to get back to painting those because they were a lot of fun, but I really have to solve that problem with the skin tone. What I may end up doing is just going back to painting the feathers, then I'll clear coat the feathers real quick with a matte varnish. That way I can actually work on the skin in case I either mess up or, my fingers are rubbing on it and stuff like that. Because that's the real problem is the feathers are all kind of on the outside where the skin tone's all on the inside, and either I might mess up by touching my brush on something or just, rubbing it off because I'm trying to hold it, because the feathers are on the outside. Moving on to favorite characters and regiments. All right, to start off with, we're going to start off with a favorite character for me that I still don't have all the way, but I've played a proxy with her, and I really love the Apex Predator with the Apex Queen on top. Not only does she have nice abilities to be able to use, but that Apex Predator is just an amazing big old T-Rex. It's really just a centerpiece when you have it up there, and it's pretty scary when it gets in combat. It gets brutal. So I really like mainly the aesthetic of this, and then having her up there, especially with her bigger spear, the Apex Queen. Her spear is ridiculous. But if you're going with the lore of the Wadroon, they're really powerful. They're big, actually massive creatures. So it wouldn't surprise me that they have spears like they do, the huge, absolutely ridiculously huge spears, especially sitting on top of the Apex Predator. What would have been cool is if you can get a couple more of those and then put a little satchel on the side of the Apex Predator and then have her have a couple of those there so she can kind of reach down, grab another big one and then, have a throwing, more of a barrage type of feel than just a one lance type of throw. Moving on to the Raptor Riders. Obviously I talked a lot about painting the Raptor Riders, so aesthetically I really love the Raptor Riders. Just the Raptor themselves, the feathery look, the balance of them, and then also the looking on the face and some of the claws and stuff like that, the fierceness and the scary, the scary monster look to them, or just have a great feel. They were really fun to put together, and they were really easy actually to put together, which I was surprised about. So I really like them. I like them for another reason, but we'll get into that in a moment. Also the Warbred, aesthetically, I really, they're good in combat, but aesthetically I just love the fact that they're holding on to this big old column, and they're going to use that as a big old weapon instead of, instead of anything else. They could have sharpened metal, they could have even sharpened wood and trees, but no, they're just gonna get a big old blunt a marble column and strap it to their arm and bash you with it. It just has a great feel. I love the way they look. The last regiment that I really absolutely love, both Last Argument of King and First Blood, are the Slingers. Now I really love that they have a pretty good range in Last Argument, the 20-inch range, and they have the armor piercing in Last Argument. In First Blood, they have the 15-inch range, which is actually pretty decent when it comes to ranges for First Blood. But they have torrential fire, which I really like, and I use to a great advantage. The models themselves, while I think their backpacks make them a little bit too bulky to be able to put on stands in the Last Argument, I do think that those are really cool ornamental pieces. And I have one on one of my slingers, kind of like I've been using him as a leader, mainly for First Blood. And I'll probably do that with another one or two for leaders for First Blood, because I like the regiments a lot more in First Blood than I do in Last Argument. But I like both of the both styles of playing. You know, the slingers are just like a really great unit to have, especially since they're a true ranged unit when it comes to both of the games. And the sun is coming out and making everything much brighter all of a sudden. It's been raining here, so yeah, that's why everything got bright all of a sudden. Next up are my favorite rules. And then the sun goes away. Or starting to. Okay. Now, I'm just going to mention here that I like the war chants. They're definitely not my favorite because they're a little bit confusing to figure out when you first read them. And then they can be very problematic when you're trying to run them and you want to give a specific regiment a specific bonus, and then a regiment dies, and then all of a sudden you have a war chant kind of missing that you expected, and it can really mess things up. And it just takes a little bit more planning in order to do what you kind of want to do. So the war chants, they're very beneficial, and you could do a lot of great things with them, especially army building to get the higher war chants, the higher levels of the war chants and stuff. But they're just definitely not my favorite. When it comes to my favorite, there's actually 3 of my favorite rules that I use specifically in that in the Wadrun army. And the first one we're gonna go over is the one that I've gone over before in some of my other army lists, is fluid formation. The Raptor Riders have fluid formation, and I absolutely love this ability, especially for, I think, the Raptor Riders, since they have a ranged attack. So it's kind of important, especially getting around terrain and how fast they move, to get them around and then reform them so that you can shoot at things before you want to go and charge them, if you do want to go and charge them. The next 2 rules all have to do with the slingers, because I really like the slingers. We're going to start with the bullet carver for the Last Argument of King. Wounds caused by this regiment as a result of a volley action cause morale tests. The rule does not apply to character stands that have joined this regiment. Adding a bullet carver is really nice in Last Argument of King. I really think it's important to have one, especially when you have the armor piercing 1, which means they're going to get some hits through, and then they're going to have to take morale tests right after that. So you can really whittle down an enemy regiment with slingers. Now, moving on to the next rule that I like for the slingers is the First Blood rule, which I like even more than the bullet carver. The bullet carver is really nice, but I actually like torrential fire a lot more. And this is what makes me take sometimes 2 different regiments of 8 different slingers. Let's look at torrential fire real quick. Torrential fire. Each successful hit this regiment inflicts generates an additional ranged attack. These additional ranged attacks cannot generate further rolls. So basically, for every hit you get another dice to add to the pool to start to roll in order to get more hits. Next up, my playstyle. For my playstyle, it really involves around protecting my slingers and using my Raptor Riders to engage and like either push back the enemy regiments or kind of distract them from what I'm trying to do. And then kind of bring up if I have my warbread in the background. I really like the slingers, and I really like to protect them and use them as much as possible. In Last Argument, they're really, especially with a bullet carver, they're really useful because you can always shoot at things, whether they're in engagement. So I go take my Raptor Riders, stuff up a regiment that, they may kill my Raptor Riders, but I'm going to bring up my slingers, and then my slingers are going to be shooting at them. My Raptor Riders are going to be attacking them, and I'll have 2 different regiments attacking the same unit and hopefully take it out before they take out my Raptor Riders. Then in First Blood, I'm always trying to maneuver my slingers so that they can have free shot at different regiments, because if something gets engaged either by the enemy attacking or charging me or me charging the enemy, then I still have a different regiment to shoot at, because in Last Argument you can't shoot at engaged regiments. So there's a little bit different strategy that I play for the different games, and like I said, I've been playing First Blood a lot more when it comes to my Wadroon. So it's definitely evolved around slingers, protecting slingers, and making sure that they have a line of fire to shoot at the enemies. Next up, the future of my army. So as you can tell, there's a little bit of hole in my army, and there are some pieces that I definitely need to upgrade and get more of. The Apex Predator is definitely something that's totally missing out of my lineup. I definitely want one. I have the Apex Queen, and I hopefully will be getting one relatively soon. But I also have some missing pieces. I definitely need another another regiment of Blooded Braves. I need to get the Hunters. They're actually a little bit better. I do like their bigger spears. They work better. I actually can throw them. And then I need 3 more Warbred, definitely. I like the Warbred, and they're really good on the battlefield. I've even thought about getting another regiment of Slingers, and the Hunter Packs are definitely something that I want. And then, there are some future pieces that are going to be coming out from the army that I definitely will be getting. All right, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Resinator's Conquest podcast. This concludes all of the army factions, so the next episode is going to be a little bit different. We won't have the same format, obviously, but I have an interview all set up that I'll be probably editing today, as well as this one, to get this one out. But we have an interview with an Instagram vanguard of Conquest, and I don't want to ruin the surprise, but you guys will see it coming up soon, in 2 weeks. All right, thank you for joining me.